Well, hello, and welcome back, subscribers and new viewers, to another Sunday Speed Paint, and once again it is time for me to redraw the illustration for the world of Louvel. For those who have no idea what I'm talking about, if this is the first time you've seen it, you do not have to go back and rewatch all of the old speed paints that I've done of these. It's just, here's the pictures on screen of the older drawings that I've done over the years. When I first made it in 2017, it was obviously just for fun, and as I redrew it, I thought, oh, I'll expand on the scene since I didn't draw any backgrounds and change a few things here and there, and I'm going to have to break this video up into two parts because initially I was just going to redraw it and create a big old fun zoomed out scene like I did last year, but this time I decided to change the overall angle, composition, all that fun stuff, so that I could actually do a second part where I actually make reference sheets of the characters and tell you more about it in depth, because believe it or not, after drawing this drawing 6 times now, I still don't have reference sheets for these two characters. They just have names, a Google document, and every year I was redrawing them because I didn't expect to get so attached to them. It was just supposed to be a single image, as if it was like a cover of a comic or a book or whatever I wanted it to be. The past me had no additional, like, foresight or whatever you want to call it, looking to where I am now. So for me now, in case I draw this again next year and decide to continue on with this to see how my art style and overall techniques have improved, I'm giving myself an assistance because I'm going to be having reference sheets and being able to share more of this with all of you with the changes that I've made, because, oh boy, I didn't make very many changes of it. The additional, like, information that I added in with the character Serenity, who's a Neko, was not at all in the original story. It was literally just the anthropomorphics of Mugala, which is a terrible name. There was no thought behind it. It just sounded kind of like a Neko anthropomorphic kind of sounding name for an island, and Nemoria, which just sounded cool to me. Again, this was all back in, like, 2017, so it was when I was much younger and had no experience with any of the stuff that I do now, with story, characters, background development, all that fun stuff that goes into these things. Plus, this wasn't meant to be anything more than just me taking a Google document and one single illustration of two characters and redrawing it and reading out the story as if I was reading a story time or a book to you all. So I didn't need to have all the extra details. I didn't need a reference sheet because it's not like I was redrawing these characters more than just for a quick little redraw every year. But now that I have all these other characters and a spark reignited for this project, while I have my main webcomic on pause for hiatus so that I can actually work on it, all of this has been great for me to practice and build off of and actually do some of the things that I neglected to that would have been beneficial from the get-go. And I am learning these lessons and sharing them with you so that you guys don't make the same mistakes I'm currently doing, because it happens. Even the best of people who try to plan out everything still miss things, and that's part of the process. If I didn't have all of these hiccups along the way, I wouldn't learn from them, because believe me, there are some things that I didn't know. Like when I first figured out that rendering is not just exclusive to 3D models, nor is it something that has to be painterly realistic. It just means that you add in additional details past the general color and shading and highlighting stages to refine things. All of these things, they feel like they should be super easy to access, but sometimes it's just the lessons take a while to sink in for me, and it takes me longer when I'm being a physical, like, hands-on and visual learner. So when I was making this illustration, I thought, alright, I understand the basics of putting a character into their environment. I'm looking at last year's illustration and I am sobbing because it looks like I had two entirely different projects. One being the background, which looks fantastic, and one being the characters, which look like I just kind of took them from another drawing and slapped them onto the background, which wasn't what I was aiming for. I was aiming for them to fit into the background as best I could. Another thing is that I didn't give a lot of detail and thought behind the outfits and accessories and the scars, and if you noticed, every single time I redrew it, the characters changed, and obviously from the 2017 version for the better, because you couldn't see anything. Proportions, anatomy, all of that were haywire, and there was just lots of chunky bits to it, and even the redraw that I did later in 2019, 2020, 21, all of those, I kept changing if the characters were clothed or not, if they had accessories or not, the powers, the scars, all these things, I just kept changing, because again, I didn't have a reference sheet because I didn't make one, because I wasn't thinking about it like that. I was just redrawing the single illustration, because I wasn't planning for this to become what it is now, and whether that's a good or a bad thing in the long run of whatever comes after this. I'm also stating this for future me in case I decide to go back and look at this for reference, because when I went back and re-listened to last year's video, it was nice. I was able to share the story straightforward, I wasn't rambling or repeating, and then when I went even further back, it became an even bigger garbled mess, and I could barely understand myself. The quality of the video just, ooh. So I know that I am improving by looking back at what I have done. That's at least beneficial in the long run for my goals that I've had, because it's different from when I made some of my other videos, like when I talked about the stuffies or the old Call of Duty revised story that I made. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can check that out. I have all these videos. It's basically supposed to be a one and done type of situation, but since this is a roughly now yearly redraw to see the change and growth and techniques that I have changed over the years for the better, it's been more of me putting a lot more into it, and I need to change the way that I approach it. So the fact that I'm splitting this into two parts, where this first one is me actually redrawing it the way that I see it in my brain, putting so much time and effort into this scene, and also changing the layout, composition, basically just characters aren't standing in basic poses and actually seem like they're fitting into their environment, because I've had a bad habit of this, and something that one of my good friends had told me a bunch of times, is that the way that I draw my characters and backgrounds is usually I don't plan them together. I will start by doing either the background or the characters without thinking about the natural, like, depth when you look at it, like the background, midground, foreground, and that's bad. That's really bad, especially considering that I need these characters to look like they belong where they are, rather than a slapped-on background, like it's a picture from Google. When I was working on this, I thought, okay, I'm going to have the character, I just realized this entire time I haven't said either of the characters' names. Lovely. For if you haven't seen it, the characters on screen, Zell is the anthropomorphic character on the left side, and Cameron is the human from the right side, and for those who want just a very quick, brief bit of information, but there will be much more in the next video, so don't worry if none of this makes sense. Basically, it's the humans versus the anthropomorphics, and they are descendants of kings and queens that had a rivalry and a traitor named Caleb, who was a leopard, and then additionally, which you won't get to see until the next video, Serenity, who is a Neko, who is a result of everybody else solving the problem without them, and now they're just locked in basically a war that isn't necessarily theirs to do anymore. It's just basically fighting a war that has expanded so far that they've forgotten what even started it in the first place, and it's just carried on. It's kind of just, these two characters have changed a lot from my initial cheesy story that I initially created, because in my old notes from my Google document that I still have here, it's got a highlighter, it's got marks on it, it's got a printed out map that I don't even know, excuse me, I don't even know where I got some of the images. It looks like I copied and pasted a bunch of generic pictures from Google or Street View and just threw it together with names on here, like, allow me to read you the hilarious names of some of the other islands that I had chosen. We've got Braswell, which isn't terrible. We've got Howell's Lake, Pascana, Jagged Top, Crest Lake, Cheria, and just Nobril, Vern Shallows, Misty Lake. Wow, so original. Baluna, the Cobalt Gulf. My god. I don't know what 2017 me was thinking, but it didn't get too much better, because even in the more recent rendition when I did from 2020, I still kept some of the names. Like, I have, like, Vobel, O'Dreen, Stanton. It's just, These names, these things, all of these notes that I kept on here, and even making little additional notes that I was going to name a very specific hybrid of dragon and wolf species called Draggles. Draggles. I even typed out how you, would spell it. Same thing with when I was trying to pronunciate Mugala and Nemoria. I literally spelled mew like how a cat mews, and then gala, Galla, because I needed to specify it very specifically. And Nemoria was N-E, more, and then another E, and then another A, just to make it very clear on how to pronounce it. This is what I mean by I am an extremely visual artist in person. If I do not have these in my hand or within range of sight on another device, I have no idea what I am referring to. Again, like I said, it took me until, 8 to 10 minutes into this video to remind myself that I didn't mention Zell or Cameron's names once, yet I was talking about this entire process. Now, of course, my main thing with this video was talking about the process and the changes, because, again, I was initially just creating the illustration and then reading out to you the story so that you knew, but there's been massive changes, so by the time I make my next video, when I go into more of the characters and actually show you their reference sheets and go into more detail on the personality and why they look the way they do, again, the scars that they have on them, all of that's going to be in the next part when I go into an in-depth one. For those who are confused, I'm going to basically do like I did for my Undertale alternate universe reincarnation, redesigning them and going in more depth to it, because it just feels like something that I didn't do beforehand, and it will be beneficial in the long run. Plus, it's also fun to kind of see the change. Like, I don't know if anyone else noticed this with these characters, but the characters aged unintentionally for each and every single one of these drawings, and they were supposed to be mid-20s to 30-year-old human and anthropomorphic characters, but it looks like they went from children, which around the time of 2017 I was just freshly starting out with a PS Vita as my drawing tablet, to by the time I got to 2021 or 2022, one of my more recent ones, they looked kind of like young adults, so it looks like they aged as I was trying to create them instead of keeping consistency, which is, it's part of the growth of my artwork. I don't expect it to be consistent over the years. I expect improvement, which is a good thing, but for the sake of making sure that characters' hair color, the accessories, the scars, all of that are at least somewhat consistent, I think is important from here onward, especially if I'm going to be making reference sheets of them like I should have done at the very least last year or the year prior to that, so that I knew what I was doing, because I've made tons of reference sheets. That was my whole thing last year, not yesterday. Wrong time period, not long enough there. What I ended up doing instead of making these reference sheets was basically just focusing on making sure that I read out the story, all whimsical and fantasy-like, but if you listen, I sound really monotone. I wasn't just letting myself go ham and enjoying sharing it to you. I was like a nervous kid in school who was about to do a presentation in front of everybody and just sitting there with my notes in my hand, not even looking up once at the audience before me, even though you guys can't see me. I'm just like, alright, here's the story of Louvel and Zell and Cameron, is basically what I sound like to myself when I'm looking at my video, even from last year, which is not what I want when I want to have these videos be engaging for all of you. So I hope that with this, the redraw, let me know what you guys think of the changes. Obviously the perspective of it is very different. It's like up close action scene with the characters lunging at each other instead of a zoomed out one. Additionally, I also wanted to mention that these videos are a lot more natural with the way that I've been doing things. Instead of posting almost like 10 to 20 videos a month, I have reduced it down to, maybe 3 videos a month so that I can make them of higher quality rather than quantity, and actually have time to script it and speak more naturally instead of last minute and rushing myself, as well as also giving me the opportunity to make the illustrations match that high quality that I've been aiming for all this time. Especially with this redraw illustration, I feel so proud of what I'm looking at here, especially compared to last year's, even if it is a up-close different change of the way that you're looking at these characters instead of them zoomed out, because as I have learned, it takes time to understand the perspective, proportions, and even just the tone that I want. And hopefully with this added into my portfolio for the artwork that I've made, It shows the difference and growing change of these illustrations over the years of what I've been prioritizing, as I've mentioned, for my goals for this year, being able to create these illustrations and build up a portfolio that I am proud of and get to share with all of you who have seen me with some of my rougher illustrations from the early days of 2019 and 2020. And also, I hope that you guys also kind of learn some things here and there from the general tips and advice of learning from my failures and just in general, encouraging you all to create things, because you never know, like, if I didn't do this redraw every single year, I wouldn't have these stories come to life and these illustrations to look back upon, and if I had given up on it back in 2017 or even in 2019 when I redrew it, I wouldn't have all of this fun content to share with you all today. That's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so very much. If you have not already, don't forget to leave some likes and comments and subscribe to join the Subscribblers squad. In the meantime, don't forget to check out some of my playlists, and if you would like any fan artwork featured at the end of the video in the Subscribblers gallery, tag me in it. I would love to see what you guys make, and if you'd like to support my works and see more, check out my card link below, especially for the patron exclusive rewards. £2 a month, the Fennec Fox tier gets you access to secret sketches and artwork early. The Arctic Foxes, for £5 a month, you get exclusive access to videos and webtoons pages early, and the Red Foxes have the opportunity to be featured as a background character or a commission instead, and your name read out at the end of the videos just like this. Thank you so much to Frankie Jr. 13 and Spot Draws. Stay possum, Subscribblers, and I'll see you real soon.